You know, what I want to look at is something that in passing, 2 weeks ago when I taught out of Psalm 28, there was something that I saw in reading the Hebrew that I thought is the example, if you will, of why I feel very blessed to be able to read the Hebrew and not rely strictly on the English translation, whichever one you look at. I want you to turn to Psalm 28. And my focus, obviously, at this point when we did this, I was looking at this, and verse 7 was my focus. Even though I went through the psalm, verse 7 was my focus. And it kind of is interesting because I had done the whole translation of the psalm. In the King James, when you get to verse 9, it says, "Save thy people, bless thine inheritance, feed them also, and lift them up forever." And I put that tail end of that, where it says, "Feed them also, and lift them up forever." And you don't really, for the years that you've watched or listened, you don't really have to know Hebrew too much. When we quote Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd," this word, the root of it is to shepherd. And so we have here and an imperative, shepherd them, or be their shepherd. And I love this, another imperative, and carry them. And if you were around when Dr. Scott was teaching out of Isaiah 53, you'll recognize the what he pronounced it as Nasa, which always stayed in my brain as Nassau liftoff, to carry, right? So and shepherd them and carry them. And that word has a special emphasis. It is in many ways suggestive. We tend to think of artwork where Jesus is seen carrying the little small animals, and it's all fluffy. But this word is very suggestive in this passage. It carries with it the connotation of, and imperatively, shepherding them and carrying them in the sense that they cannot carry themselves. And there's something beautiful in that. I connect this word to shepherd, or shepherd them, to other places in the Bible. Psalm 23 is the first one that comes to my mind. The Lord is my shepherd. And the idea, which is kind of hidden, feed them also and lift them up forever. Now, the idea of lifting is fine, but I also want you to get the idea of carrying that which is not able to carry itself, or bear that which is not able to bear itself. So I love this. I love the Hebrew of this, and we have here an ha'olam, to forever, into eternity, forever, or for eternity. Now, I was studying for another message, but I saw this and I thought, that is so beautiful. That right there at the end of this, remember, if you go back, and I have my 26th translation out tonight, but if you go back to the beginning of the psalm where David is saying, "Unto thee will I cry, O Lord, my rock, be not silent to me." And I said very striking. We would never think, at least I would not think, and I think we all have the same way of the tendency of reading the Bible this way, that David for a minute experienced, even though it's written here, that he experienced the silence of God the way we do. Exactly the way we do. So it's almost a perfect ending to this beginning of recognition that David had those moments of feeling abandoned or God had taken his hand away. And it closes with an imperative concept. Be thou, you could translate it that way, be thou their shepherd, shepherd them, and carry them. And it is to forever or into eternity. And I love that idea because we go through seasons of strength and weakness. And even something as small as this, it's not even a complete sentence. It's not even a complete thought, if you will. Now, in the 26th translation, there are some pretty good, be their shepherd also, bear them up forever. Be thou their shepherd and carry them forever. Shepherd them and support them forever. Be their shepherd evermore in thy arms, upholding them. I love that one. That just, I don't want you to think fuzzy animals being carried, because you are the fuzzy animals in this case. Lead them like a shepherd and carry them forever in your arms. That's very poetic and very beautiful. But I just want you to see sometimes there are these hidden things. They're hidden because, again, I come back to the language. That when you see them, and I pray you'll jot these down, because you don't need to necessarily read or understand Hebrew. Just writing down a footnote on that, the tail end of that verse. You know, I'm trying to amass different places, because we have enough of those that we know very well, that we're very familiar with. I'm trying to amass some different places where we can get comfort. You know, you have a favorite pair of shoes, right? They're the shoes you've broken in, and they're comfortable, and you put them on, and they're like slippers. Those are the scriptures, Psalm 37, Psalm 84, Isaiah 50. Those ones they're comfortable, they're familiar, but it's good to have other places of comfort and other places of familiarity. And this is one that, again, I see sometimes when we have those moments where you know you need to latch on to something. So you could almost, I hate to sound Catholic here, you could almost string this together like a string of beads, because if you were to take the opening of Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd and I shall not want, or I'll lack nothing, and put it together, here comes your next bead if you want, and shepherd them and carry them, because they cannot carry themselves into eternity. And you keep going into the New Testament, where we read about, in Peter's writing, Peter tells us about the great chief shepherd. You can just see with such clarity how throughout the book we have this clear picture of Jesus, and we have this clear comfort of what he is to his people. Now, I think sometimes, I do well to say this, because even I forget this. You know, we can have great days of strength, as thy days, and you're so eager to quote that, and we have great days of weakness. And no one wants to have days of weakness. No one likes those days. You know, we prefer to have strong days, and we're just ready to go, right? But it's in those weak days, when we have very little strength, that we turn to these scriptures, and the clarity that comes in the knowledge that when I am weak, I am made strong through him, because of my weakness. When I'm strong, I don't have the ability to see that or understand or even recognize that He's carrying me because I cannot carry myself. The burdens, the troubles, or whatever it is. And, I have them too. I'm not immune. I have feelings. I'm a human being. I have a heart, last time I checked. I have a pulse. And these are the things that give me comfort. So, part of this was to show you this beautiful translation. I want to take a quick break, and then we're going to jump into similar concept in two different places in the New Testament, just to kind of balance this out between Old and New. But right now, I want you to get on the telephone. On the backdrop of this scripture, the obvious is John 10, where Jesus says, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same as the thief and the robber, but he that entereth in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the porter openeth, the sheep hear his voice, he calleth his own sheep by name, he leadeth them out. And when he putteth forth his own sheep, he goeth before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And a stranger will they not follow, but flee from him." And verse 7, Jesus saith them again, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, I am the door of the sheep." And then he says, "I am the door." And read in verse 14, "I am the good shepherd, and know my sheep, and am known of mine." Now, the beauty of all of this, as I said, I still wrestle with people who say, I can't read. They are stuck with, they can't read the Old Testament, or they have difficulty making concepts be crystallized in the New. And that's because you must read them together. It's one, it's like half and half that must fit together. In fact, it would be very difficult to just read the New Testament and talk about the death of Jesus, for example, if you didn't have the Old Testament to understand what came behind there, what activities that were required, what was not just a reconciliation that His shed blood washes us and saves us from our sin, but the first event. Without that first event, there's this piece, this gargantuan piece of information missing. So likewise, when we see through the book that the shepherd concept is there, and these are not new thoughts, but they emphasize something. He is there to watch over, to ensure the safety of, and taking from my psalm, shepherding them and carrying them. Now we are dumb sheep. We really are. And I've told you before, I really like the Greek word for sheep, which is probaton. I told you one time I was teaching speaking at San Quentin, and that was one of the messages that I delivered. Was I gave a message on the shepherd and the sheep, and gave a translation, and said the sheep that's the Greek probaton, like the word probation. So the inmates understand that. But if you really think about it, and we laugh at that, but if you really think about that, there is that element that we should kind of take note of as well. We're given this life. We think we know what we're doing most of the time. Somebody had to remind me just as I was on my way here that sometimes things that we think are good for us are indeed not good for us. And sometimes God will protect us from ourselves. The same concept of the Lord shepherding us and carrying us because we cannot carry ourselves. Sometimes, that grass looks pretty attractive over there. I'm going for that green stuff because that's a different color green over there. That looks like better food. And you end up wandering off, and before you know it, that safety of numbers that you were with is eclipsed somewhere, and you find yourself, you've wandered off and strayed. So I love this concept, which then, of course, Peter picks up in 1 Peter and verse 5 as the final concept, when he says in 1 Peter 5 and verse 4, "And when the chief shepherd shall appear, you shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away." So see the whole idea of being carried and tended to and sometimes whacked with the rod. There's a reward at the end. You know, if there was no reward, I might just say, wow, all of that for what? But there's a reward there. You shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. So not only is there comfort for the trip, but eyes focused on exactly where it is you're going to, that particular place, gives you also an idea that the trip has value. There's something at the end. I don't mean at the end per se, but just what Peter says. When he shall appear, ye shall receive. So, I don't know. I think sometimes I find these, what I'll call them, little nuggets that give me motivation to string a few scriptures together and then look at the whole. And I can see from beginning to end how, God calls Moses as a type to lead the people out. And he is the shepherd of the people, per se, leading the people out. And you could just keep stringing those on to see how God has always been taking care of his people like this and carrying them when they could not carry themselves. And the beautiful picture is that at the end of all this, when he appears, ye shall receive something that fades not away. It is the crown that says, not only did you make it, but the victory is yours. Now, it's a small lesson, hopefully with a big impact of comfort on the heart, because I think we all can use some of that on a daily, sometimes hourly basis. Now get on the telephone.
Come into this house, magnify the Lord, lift up holy hands, our hearts in one accord. Worship and bow down before him, exalt his name today. Come into this house,